We've talked a lot on the channel about how to discuss our asexuality with people we're in relationships with. But how do we talk about asexuality with everyone else? Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here. So it should come as no surprise to anyone that talking about asexuality is difficult. Most of us have some challenges and feel that it is an obstacle to have the conversation about our aceness in different aspects of our life. Now, I think this conversation about asexuality is hard for two big reasons. First, any discussion of sexual orientation is really a conversation about sex. When we bring up our sexual orientation to others, or other people reveal their sexual orientation to us, those terms are describing our personal relationships to sex in many ways. Now, yes, there are shades of gray and variations and spectrums about how people relate to sex in all of the sexual orientations, but it's still putting us in the mind of how does this person connect to the practice of sex. And that's just really uncomfortable. That's a very uncomfortable space to be in. How we relate to sex, how we participate in sex is not necessarily something that we want to have conversations about with everyone in our lives or with anyone in our lives. So that immediately creates an anxiety around this particular conversation. Secondly, any discussion of asexuality in particular is going to be hard because we don't have a common cultural understanding of asexuality. So bringing up our asexuality in a conversation with like coworkers or family or friends or in relationships can be doubly challenging because not only we are revealing those personal bits of information about how we are going to relate to the practice of sex, but we are also going to be placed in a position many times of being an educator. We have to fill in the education gaps for the people we're talking about in order for us to avoid stereotypes and wrong preconceived ideas about aceness in the people that we're sharing with. So we have to wear two hats in all of these conversations. We have to wear the hat of revealing ourselves and the kind of the risk and challenge of vulnerability. And we also have to wear the hat of being an educator. We have to teach people to understand the language we're using with them. And I think when those two things come together, it makes for such a perfect storm of uncomfortableness for a lot of ace folks. That is a hard place to be. Now, we've spent a lot of time here on the channel talking about how to have conversations about asexuality with people we're in intimate relationships with. How do we talk about that to our like romantic partners or our queer platonic partners? How do we talk about aceness with those people in the closest little bubbles of our lives? But in this video, I want to talk more about how we speak about asexuality safely and confidently and comfortably with the other people that occupy our lives. How do we talk about it when it comes up at work? How do we talk about it when it comes up with family? How do we talk about it among our friends? Because those are very different contexts, those are very different situations, and those contexts have their own particular pitfalls. Release yourself from the obligation of being out. So I think one of the most important gifts we can give ourselves is letting go, feeling obligated or responsible for being out. There can be a lot of social and cultural pressure to be out as an ace person. You can hear arguments that, well, because we are so underrepresented, ace people need to speak up and be seen and be visible. And you can also, just by being in online spaces and seeing very open, very confident ace folks talking about their asexuality, feel a kind of pressure that, maybe I should be like that too. It's important to understand that there is no obligation that you have to be out. If you choose not to share your sexual orientation with other people, be that people you are at work with, people who you are friends with in your family, that is entirely a decision for you. And that decision doesn't undermine your experience and your identity and your connection to labels like ace. I often say that coming out is something we do for ourselves. And it's very important to keep that in mind when you're thinking about how you're going to talk to, or if you're going to talk to other people about your aceness. Sharing it is something you do for you. It's something that will make you feel more complete, something that will make you feel more fulfilled or full. It is not something we do to appease other people. Have a good elevator speech. If you do decide to come out to people outside of your intimate relationships, I think it's really important to have a really good elevator speech, or in some cases, multiple elevator speeches. And when I say elevator speech, I am talking about a short, concise, pre-scripted and memorized speech that you give when you are sharing that you're ace. The elevator speech is something that you have right at your disposal. It's right at the top of your head whenever you need it. And you're not going to have that awkward fumbling moment of trying to find the right words to say what you want to say to someone when your aceness becomes public and on the table. Your elevator speech can contain the definition. It contain sort of what asexuality means to you if you feel comfortable sharing that with people. But the most important part about the elevator speech is just that it's your words that you've thought about, and it's a way that you feel most comfortable and confident describing your aceness. Now, a great thing about the elevator speech is that you can adapt it for different situations. So instead of having one elevator speech that's set for every person in your life, you can maybe think through, okay, well, so this is my elevator speech for family conversations. This is what I feel comfortable explaining to them. Here's my elevator speech for work friends. This is the level of things I'm comfortable explaining to them. Here's the elevator speech for my friends. This is what I feel comfortable saying to them. I think it's a really important thing to recognize that not every person in our life holds the same position of importance and priority. So each person in our life, whatever position they hold, can have different access to different bits of information. The way I describe my asexuality to, for example, the students I'm in class with now that I'm back in school is going to be very different from the way that I talk about asexuality with some of my friends that I hang out with. And that's going to be different from the way I talk about asexuality in a work or professional context. Having that one elevator speech, or if you want multiple elevator speeches for different groups and communities you're a part of, is going to make you feel more empowered to have these conversations. You're not going to feel adrift. You're going to feel like you have a set of tools, and you're going to feel more confident in having these conversations and potentially answering questions. Set your conversation boundaries. It is also really, really valuable to have good boundaries in these conversations. When we're talking about our asexuality to the people in our lives, regardless of what community they are from, we are not opening up the door and giving permission for them to have access to everything, ask whatever they want, and just pry into our personal lives in ways that can feel very uncomfortable. Sharing our asexuality is not providing unlimited access to us. So it's good for us to know and to be able to articulate our boundaries in these personal conversations. For example, when I am sharing my asexuality with someone new and we are kind of getting into maybe the question portion, I make it very clear, hey, I am happy to talk about asexuality in the general. I'm happy to talk about what it is and what the community is, but I'm not going to talk about the mechanics of it in my life. I won't talk to you about how my personal relationships work. I'm not going to talk to you about what those personal relationships consist of and what we are doing when we are home alone. That's the boundary I have, and that's the boundary I articulate. So they're able to ask questions about asexuality in theory, but we're not going to talk about it in practice. Decide for yourself what those boundaries are for you, and also do a boundaries elevator speech. Put together the language that you're going to feel comfortable saying in these conversations when it's time to set those boundaries. And also know that if you are in an ongoing connection with a person, it's good to know that boundaries can change. You can open up the kind of access a person has if you trust them more, if the relationship merits it, if the relationship progresses in a way that you feel more comfortable sharing more things with them. Now, those little bits of advice aren't going to solve all your problems talking about asexuality. You're still going to probably have to haul out the PowerPoint, which... the PowerPoint. But I hope that those bits of advice and those strategies will help those conversations be a little easier for you. And hopefully you will feel a little more confident in jumping into those conversations with people in your life. If you choose to be out as an ace person, making that process of coming out easier makes all the difference in the world. So hopefully that's helpful. As always, thank you for supporting the channel, and I'm glad you're here.